Before we start, come cleanse with me. I always cleanse my space and my cards before I ever start working with them, because they're a big part of my spiritual work. There's many different kinds of cleansing. Cleanse however feels right and good to you. I mean, some people say it's ethically to do white sage, some people say it's not. It's up to your beliefs. It's how you like to do it, and it's what you were taught is what I believe is right for you. Personally, I'm Native American. I get my sage from the reserve, from my grandmother, so I think it's okay for me to sage with white sage. But if that's not you, that's cool. I use Palomero sometimes. There's some wonderful sprays for people who can't deal with the smoke. There's all kinds of different ways to sage your things. You could even sage, like, some people sage their brooms, or they sage their feathers, and then they just use the feathers over and over again and sage them periodically, like after a reading or before, so they don't have it, because the smoke smell bothers them. What works for you? Do what works for you. I'm not here to tell you how to do it. Okay, so what is tarot modification? If you already know, I'll put a link at the bottom where you can just skip this part. Tarot modification is where you change your tarot cards to try to make them fit you more. Most people do little things like edging, cutting off borders, etc. Some people believe that tarot modification isn't good because you're messing with the artist or you're defacing the deck. I feel like it's your spiritual practice. You should be free to do what you want with it, just like anything else in your spiritual practice. And you tell anyone what they should do, they're going to get mad because it's their spiritual practice. It's their personal journey. They should be allowed to do what they want. For me, there's different reasons I have done modifications on my cards. Most of my cards, all I've really done is edging. There's a few I have cut up. There's different reasons. I will show you some of those as we go on. First, I want to say this though. Do not start with your favorite set of tarot cards. Lots of people have mistakes, they have problems, things happen, and you don't want to ruin your best deck. I just don't like what I did to this deck. Originally I did it pink, and then I went back in red. I just used Corolla markers, washable, the big fat ones. And then I tried going over it with a gold that I had and I'd used before, and it ran out, and so I have some done and some not. And I don't love the gold, and I love the red, but I haven't found a good red to redo it in, and I really just need to touch it up, but I hate it. Don't like it. So I absolutely love this deck. This is probably my favorite Rider-Waite deck that I own. It's my go-to. It's my deck that always talks to me when nothing else does. It's one of my favorites. It was not my first. It was not the one I learned on. But I tried to edge it with just a green Corolla again. And when I did, I didn't like it. I just didn't like it. And at the time, I really wanted one of those gilded, shiny decks that everybody else had, and I couldn't afford that. But anyway, so I decided to take just a paint pen. It was a silver paint pen. I don't know what kind it was. It was out of my stash. I'm an artist. I have lots of them. And I shook it and I started painting, and it didn't coat the colors right. Like, it was splotchy, and it got all over the cards, and I spent months cleaning the cards afterwards. I don't suggest it, but I love how it looked afterwards, and I never did a second coat. And I wanted to show this one because I wanted to let you know that not all mistakes and fails can be horrible. Sometimes you get something wonderful that you never expected. This deck was my biggest fail ever. I didn't even use the deck but like once or twice. It was so big in my hands, I couldn't hold it. So, and it has large borders, so I thought I would just trim them off. When I trimmed them, yeah, it like peeled. There was plastic on it, and it just peeled right off. And I tried laminating it. No, the laminate wouldn't stick to it, and it just was awful. I lost half my cards just trying to fix them. It was horrible. Being the first deck that I ever trimmed or cut, I was really scared to ever do anything again. But as we continue, I am so glad I did. Alright, putting clothing on naked people. This is really up to you. I did it because I am on social media and I know I have a younger audience who watches my media. And I felt like it was the responsible thing to do. Some people feel like it defaces the cards. Some people don't like it. Some people say their clients have problems with the nudity. Personally, it's never bothered me, but it's a personal thing. As you can see, I've done many different things. Sometimes, like in the star, I highlighted the star so it'd show up, so it blended a little more. But these are the supplies I used for those. The bronze. Like all my decks, the bronze seems to work the best. This is the Crafter Square Gold from the Dollar Tree if you're interested in what it looks like. It's beautiful. I have used it on many decks. It does give you a little bit of that matte sheen to look kind of like it's gilded, but it's not shiny like gilded. The only thing is, if you look close at this matte one, you can see on the matte cards, it sometimes leaves like a smear. On this particular deck, and I love this deck, highly recommend by the way. On this deck, it didn't bother me. I kind of liked it and I left it that way. But if you're using a matte deck, I would suggest having some alcohol and like a rag or something to wipe it off as you go. But on glossy decks, it just wipes off with anything and it's easy. This is the first deck I've ever had from her. And so I didn't know what to expect. It was actually given to me by a friend. And I hated it. I loved the meanings. But I couldn't get into the cards. They were too big. They hurt my hands. I have like little kid hands. And so I was just really frustrated. So one day I just decided, you know what? If I mess them up, what do I have to lose? So this is what I did. The goal for this deck was not to change the deck. I just wanted to make it usable and make it to where I felt like it resonated with me again. As an artist, I felt like they looked unfinished and it bothered the heck out of me. So first thing I did was I trimmed all the edges off, took all that border off. And then I took a black Corolla and I went over it twice. And I'm not gonna lie here, guys, I was super, super nervous because we all know with square, you can buy a square and you can corner rounder and you can cut it. We all know you can get, a cutter and get it nice and straight. I had never cut round cards before. I've had round cards before. I don't hate round cards, but I never cut them by hand. And I knew cutting them by hand meant that they were gonna be uneven. This made me even more nervous. But when I cut them by hand and I covered them with black, this really cool thing happened, and I want to show it to you. Because you can't cut the edges perfectly, when you put them together and you hold them straight up and down, it looks perfectly back. But if you tilt it, or you look at it from the side, or you go to shuffle it, or you just ruffle it a little bit, you get this really cool pattern that matches the top. And it's because the whites from the other ones where it's not quite exactly perfect show. And I just thought this was really cool and really liked it. And then I colored them with just Prismacolor watercolored pencils. I haven't even added water yet at this stage. I just simply colored them. But this is the difference already, and it's very obvious difference. But I wasn't trying to change the pictures. I didn't want to change what was there. It just irritated me and looked undone, and I wanted it to look finished. And this is a personal preference. I'm not saying you have to cut up your deck. I'm just showing you what I did, and hoping maybe it'll spark some creativity for a deck or something that you're scared to mess with, and maybe help you to do something else with one of yours. I really love this deck, and I wanted to do something kind of different, and I wanted to try something that would incorporate the key on the front of the cards and what it looked like. And so the first thing I did was I colored it with Corolla markers. I used red on the corners, and then I faded to orange. Well, first I did the whole thing yellow. I did the entire thing yellow. And then I did the orange, and then I did the red on the corners, and then I did the orange. And then I took the yellow and I blended that together. And I did that all the way around. So that's the first thing I did. Then I took these binder clips and I clipped them together, and I used it to hold the entire deck. These are cheap, you can find these anywhere. I started on one side, and I used latex, acrylic, medium, high gloss. And I did an entire side. So I did the corner, I did all the way down, and the next corner, and then the other one, before I did anything else. Then, once that was tacky, not dry, but tacky, I went in with my eyeshadow. And I tried to pick colors that, of course, matched the colors of the Corolla that I had used to do the deck to begin with. I did one whole side, then I did the other. These are the ones I had. These are just cheap eyeshadows that I got for Christmas that are crap and don't work very well and I didn't like. So, yeah, that's what I did. And I just rubbed it on with the cheap little eyeshadow thing that they give you in the container. And then I took it off and I unsealed it, and you can see it kind of breaks away. Sorry, it's kind of dark here. I think it's lighter towards the end, but it does. It just kind of peels off. You can see, and you can see how messy the cards are. See, it just peels off, it unsticks. It's kind of cool, actually. It's kind of like when you're tearing something out of a notebook. But you see those rough edges, how bad they were? I can't stand that. I didn't want that. I didn't do all this to have a nasty mess. So, how you fix that is you go in with a Q-tip, and you see this right here, you see the white right there? That's where the gesso left a place on the cards because I wasn't good enough in cleaning it. And you just go in with this Q-tip with wet water. It just has water on it. And you just rub it. You just you rub where you want it to be gone. And then I took the other side of the Q-tip and I just rubbed it to pick it up. And then I just took a clean napkin and wiped it off at the end. And see, it's completely gone. It's completely clear. Yeah, it was super easy to clean. Now you see this little spot where it looks like it's peeling?
If you see something like that after you use your Q-tip, you need to add more water to it, because that means that it's peeling it off, and you don't want it to peel off because it'll peel off the edges on the sides too. But anyway, this is what it looked like when it was done. Before it was done, I did take it outside. I did spray it with a sealant, just whatever cheap sealant we had. I don't know, the can didn't have a label on it anymore. But here it is 3 months later, still being used every day in my everyday tray, and still looks as good as new. I haven't had any fallout, I haven't had any problems. Now before I sealed it, I did go ahead and brush it with a thing, so that way with just a regular, what's it called? Paintbrush. I sealed it with I rubbed it with a paintbrush to get off any little flakes or anything, so it didn't have little bits. So the first thing to remember is to look at what kind of paper you have. Is it shiny? Is it matte? That's going to have a lot to do with your materials. And they usually come with like these little cards. And these little cards are great because they're just an extra card in the deck, but they give you something that you can edge, you can cut, you can kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like before you cut it. Because, you know, once you cut something, you can always make it smaller. You can't make it bigger. The other thing to keep in mind is how rare is your deck. I don't suggest edging or doing something dramatic to a deck that's rare, hard to get a hold of, because you may not be able to get it again, and if you mess it up, then there's nothing you can do. The other thing you can do to practice and to kind of figure out what colors you want, what styles you want, is really good thing is playing cards. Buy a cheap thing of playing cards and edge those and see what those are like. And my last two words of advice. First off, my other word of advice is, if you're thinking about doing a deck modification, go check out somebody else's tutorials first. See what other people have done. See what's worked for them. See what materials they've used. Boho Tarot is a great place to start if you know nothing about modifications. This video was really more for people who already know a little bit and were looking for something a little different. The second thing I have to tell you is there's a lot of cards in a tarot deck. So when you think about edging these or cutting them down, it's a lot of work, and you've got to be willing to put in that time and do all of it, because otherwise it just looks weird. And if you're using Corolla, use it twice. Always go over your things twice.